Good morning. I hope everybody that listens is keeping well. Wanted to share some thoughts. A while back, I was listening to the internet, and this woman was talking some sense. Perry, I think her name is Kate Perry. I'm not sure, might be mistaken. She's an author, and she also has a channel, I think. She's often interviewed, and I caught some of her interviews. She's quite well spoken, quite easy to understand. And she made some excellent points against feminism. Okay, fast forward. Recently, YouTube algorithm gave me a video of her. It was like half an hour or something. And I was like, okay, let's listen. Let's see what she has to say because I haven't heard of this author. I haven't heard of her like some time now. Let's see what she's up to. And I clicked on it. She pretty much blames now feminism and using abortion as a contraceptive, strategy. She's blaming everything on paganism, and I'm like, what? And Christianity will be the only way to save the day. And I was scratching my head. Oh man, she was so brilliant, and now she comes out with this. I mean, I understand that you know the Abrahamic faiths, they have strategies of preventing promiscuity, and it's almost like an antidote for the archetype of Lilith. You know, the archetype of Lilith, which is similar to the archetype of Shiva, the destroyer. Uh, she pretty much seduces and devours men, right? And children, right? And of course, a destroyer because she destroys everything in her path. She's quite emotional and chaotic. And uh, uh, the Abrahamic faiths, it's true, they have ways of preventing, of almost like an antidote of suppressing the Lilith archetype. Um, she has a point there, but it's not because, pagans, it's not because of the rise of paganism. Some people say there's a rise in paganism. I don't see it. I see a rise in atheism. Yeah, I see a rise in atheism, not in paganism at all. Um, there's a lot of movements that pass as paganism, but they're not pagans. They are more Abrahamic than anything else. They're using the same architecture, you know. So anyway, I was like, why is she thinking? Why did she said that? Her reasoning was ancient Rome, right? They were quite pagan, and their population started collapsing because of many reasons. And I would say similar to what's going on now. Yes, women started, getting lots of privileges and powers, and they pretty much occupied, their life, working, and they just didn't have time to raise kids. They had a salary and all that stuff that we are witnessing now, and it's a slippery slope. In the beginning, it's yeah, we have arrived at a certain stability in our society. We can change our ways. Instead of women being housewives and having 4 or 5 kids, let's have them, I don't know, study and work, which studying actually was something women already did. They were the ones who could read and write, and they would educate their children. That schools was only for those who already knew how to read and write, right? Schools was after 14 or 16 or something like that, and you had to do an exam to be accepted. And the exam was a trivium. You ought to read, write, and know how to debate. That's how you got accepted into school. It was mainly women that actually taught their children, So there's a lot of misconceptions, about these things. Men to just get out of the house and then work, and whatever they could, to get some, income and source resources. And but anyway, things change with when there's too much stability, and women decide, okay, I'm not gonna do this role anymore. I'm gonna, work here and there, and it's always, social type of work. It's not I'm gonna pick up a pickaxe and going to the mine extract some coal. No, women didn't get these thoughts. No, they were like, I'm going to work as a secretary. I'm going to work as I don't know, political science, a psychologist. I'm going to work as an astrologist. I'm going to open a shop to sell, being a merchant. And, never, I'm going to become a fisherman. I'm going to, risk my life catching fish or working on a mine or something. No, they wouldn't have those thoughts. After a certain stability, they would go for these jobs that were more, attractive, which is probably what's going on right now. And anyway, they started little by little abandoning the role. And so the demographics goes down, right? At the same time, the authorities, the people in charge, they see a way of fixing the situation. They see it as letting in, opening the borders, opening the gates to other peoples who want to work, to clean the toilets, to work in the fields, maintenance, build houses. So they started opening the borders, and the so-called savages. Savages is simply a derogative term to someone who doesn't know how to speak the language. So they started opening the door for these people, and they start coming in, and at some point the foreign people was more numerous. They were more numerous than the locals, and there was some kind of overturned civil war or whatever happened. Then the siege of the Roman Empire was dislocated from Rome to Constantinople. You know, so the siege of the Roman Empire became Constantinople. That's when Constantine came up with the marvelous idea of cooking up Christianity, right? While the original Rome was delivered to the Dutch, the Germans, the I don't know, the Belgium, it was those groups that sacked Rome, quote unquote, because they were more numerous. The locals, they stopped reproducing, and so anyway, Constantine cooked up, the Abrahamic faiths. It's something that happened, and they had ideas of repopulating and recapturing the territory that they lost. At some point, there was three emperors, there was three popes, one in France, one in Rome, and one in Constantinople. There was three. The Christian Reconquista started in France with Charlemagne. The Reconquista started with Charlemagne, and then it went into Spain and Portugal over 1,000 years ago. That's when the Portugal country emerged, Coimbra, when Portuguese prince decided to, take back and rebuild the empire, I suppose, the Roman Empire. It became the Catholic Roman Empire, or something like that, But anyway, she was saying it's because of pagans that people nowadays, the rise in paganism, that people nowadays use abortion, for instance, as a birth control. And I say, no, it's not. It's all abortion has always been, a choice, regardless of your race, belief, religion. Yeah, it's always been there, always. Everybody knew that there are some plants that can cause it. Yeah, there's some procedures, some surgical procedures that you can achieve it as well. Uh, what I was gonna say, right now, what we have is probably a situation which arises because of the slippery slope. It's a slippery slope when politics gets involved, and politics is all about manipulating your emotions. And you will never get to reason with someone if they are in the emotions, in the feelings. You will never get to the truth. You know, it's like arguing with a drunk. You'll never get any, or arguing with the stupid. There was this quote, I can't remember who said it, and he said, never argue with the stupid. They will pull you to their level and beat you up with experience. It doesn't make any sense to argue with the stupid and to argue with people who are highly emotional, and because emotions and feelings are illogical and irrational. You will never get anywhere with it, right? So we arrive at a situation that I think, there's people who have tons of privilege and no accountability at all to the things they do. And there's tons and tons of double standards. It just doesn't make any sense. We have to bring a little bit of reason into the world. But politics is not about reason. Politics' main interest is power, and they will pander to the feelings and the emotions and that distort reality, that distort the facts. And what they want is your consent, your approval. That's what they want, these politicians. And it's always through feelings and emotions. If you were to stay in the logic and in the rational, I mean, politicians would simply have to be all arrested because they are insane. Most politicians, and it's always been like this. Anyway, it's not because of paganism that there's a rise in feminism at all. It's because there's a lack of accountability. Yeah, there's too much, like in Rome, there's too much stability. And when there's too much stability, people get bored. There has to be something that rocks the ship, something that brings some excitement, a threat or whatever, like that president of the United States, which one, I don't know right now. He said something, I think it was Bush, he said, one thing that will unite humanity was a common threat, something that unites everybody, a common threat. That would people are not, because there's no common threat. There isn't something that unites, a common ground that will unite everybody. There isn't. There will never be. That's a utopian idea, actually. There will never be. That's against God. God, in my understanding, wanted to experience the more diversity as possible. So this coming together will never happen. This unification of humankind under one, like those films, you have an alien that invades. Everybody reacts exactly, everybody just divides itself. Everybody's got a plan, and often the plan doesn't go with, it's actually in conflict with everybody else. They just don't unite. It's impossible. Yeah. So because again, we are, as individuals or as a nation or as a group or as a creed, we are individuals that inherit a character. We inherit the character, and it's different, and luckily it's different. Otherwise, there's no such thing as utopia, and we ought to be different, and we ought to have a nice border so that we can get along. This globalization is a Christian idea, like Constantine. He wanted to unite the world under one book. You can't. It's impossible. So the reason why there's so much feminism is also because there's so many weak men nowadays. They are weak. They don't stand their grounds. In fact, geeks and nerds are the ones who actually pushed for more rights. They actually wanted to hire women to working positions, and during the Industrial Revolution and everything, they wanted. It is these geeks and nerds and economists. Um, the sexual revolution actually benefited the geeks and the nerds and the outcasts, all of these that never was extremely unattractive and never was successful with the females by giving them all these benefits and giving these um, it's not benefits, yes, you could say benefits, giving them all these privileges. There you go. Actually opened the door so they could have some action too. You know what I mean? I, when you see a guy, for instance, uh, saying to him, "Oh, I like your tattoos," or "I like your piercings," he's saying, "This one is traumatized. It's gonna be easy." That's what he's saying. You know. Anyway, um, I hope I'm making any sense. There was these places, these Christian places that were run by nuns, and it was places that people dropped unwanted babies, and there was also they also served as a single moms refuge. Yeah, and I'm not trying to be you know what's the word? I don't want to trigger you. What's the word? Oh, I can't remember right now. I'm not trying to trigger you, but it seems they found in many places, not only in these houses run by nuns or houses that took single women, uh, also in brothels. Nearby they would find these massive graves of you know, bones, and it was unwanted. You see, these creatures was unwanted, and they just got rid of them. I mean, this is old, and it will always happen. Yeah, the archetype of Kali, the archetype of Lilith. I mean, who are they? They were pissed with their husbands. Yeah, they wanted what? More power. And what happens? They end up using and abusing men and children. That's the archetype, and it's very, very old. You know. So anyway, I can't remember the term. I'm trying to remember. It's agiteur. I'm not trying to agitate or provoke. There you go, provoke. I'm not trying to agitate or provoke. It's just things that they find. They have this almost like a legend, urban legend, that the Greeks they were quite selective in their children and whatnot. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. The Spartans, they were not selecting who was the best soul's child, and the ones who wasn't, had physical, issues, they would throw them into whatever. No, that's bullshit. What there happened, that was probably a brothel, you know, and they would just discard these unwanted, beings. They were unwanted, and it was just discarded. It wasn't because of eugenics at all. Uh, Actually, eugenics, it's funny because eugenics is connected with Planned Parenthood. This is what they always wanted. The first movement of eugenics was to block the unwanted, pedigree of certain people. They wanted to, block them from reproducing, you know. And it's always been, they always wanted to control people's reproduction. That is totalitarian, Totalitarian regimes ultimately want control over your body autonomy. Yeah. And what about a better way to play with your emotions? Play with your emotions and give you all of these privileges, and just sit back and see you guys just, you know, I mean, it's crazy. One of the biggest revolutions, acts of revolution, and I say revolution in the terms of evolution and overthrowing, and I'm not saying like go back to the way you started. No, I'm saying in the sense of doing actually something evolutionary is to get married as young as possible, have plenty of babies, and teach them your character, teach them your values. That's the most revolutionary act that Europeans, for instance, can do, that anyone can do. Because the establishment, they are only concerned about GDP and stuff like that. Well, in fact, here in the old continent, they don't really care about demographics because there's no more industry, so why do they want people to, Ah, so I'm gonna stop talking now. Yeah. Have a nice day.